My name is Eileen Johnson, and I'm 32 years old. At 11:51 p.m. on a Tuesday that tasted like toothpaste and old resentments, my phone lit up with a message from my mother. We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings. A second later, my sister Kayla hearted it, like she was liking a vacation photo, not excommunicating me. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. It was colder than that, like a match striking under my ribs, heat held in a fist. I typed, "Thanks for confirming. I'll cancel all the auto payments." Send. For 12 minutes, the group chat was a dead lake. I brushed my teeth, spat, watched the mirror fog and clear, and thought about all the invisible work I'd buried under silence. The utilities in their house that were in my name. The last $12,000 in property taxes I'd paid so they wouldn't lose the place to auction. The car insurance folded under my policy after theirs lapsed. Twice. The credit cards I cleared when Mom said she couldn't sleep at night from the calls. The little lies I told my own landlord when I was 26 and barely breathing above water. Yeah, I can be a week late, so my parents could keep the lights on. I kept score exactly never. That was the job. Be the grown-up they could spend. At 12:03 a.m., the silence cracked. The chat detonated into a chorus of panic. Dad, what are you doing? Don't touch anything until we talk. Mom, are you seriously doing this right now? Eileen, this is insane. Kayla, answer, answer, answer. I set the phone face down and walked to the window. Outside, the city had that late-night hush that makes everything sound like a secret. My boyfriend, Evan, was asleep on the couch, one arm flung over his eyes, the other reaching for a blanket he hadn't pulled up. He doesn't snore. He breathes like someone who trusts the world not to collapse while he's unconscious. I watched him for a second and thought, I want that. 6 years ago, when I was 26 and finally catching my breath after a run of ramen-thin months, my parents hit the bottom of a barrel they'd been rolling toward for years. Bankruptcy warnings, foreclosure letters, collectors calling like church bells. They cried, and I said, I've got it, and I did. I put the utilities in my name. I paid the taxes. I merged the insurance. I cut checks and never said the number out loud. They promised to pay me back. 5 years went by. Then there was Kayla, golden child minted with the belief that gravity is optional. I covered her private college, $18,000 a year, for 3 years. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even pretend. When I finally told her I'd cover only half of her final semester, she said, okay, and hung up like we were done rearranging appetizers. The next day, my parents called together, an ambush on speaker. How could you abandon her now? Do you realize how damaging this is? I said I wanted to buy a home, maybe start a small business. They said, you owe this family more than that. That line branded itself somewhere behind my eyes. I paid the half, $6,800, and texted the family chat. This is it. I'm done. 10 days. No one replied. Until tonight. The phone buzzed again. 17 missed calls. 3 voicemails. Dad's was mostly static and thunder. Kayla was tears with teeth, all blame, no breath. Mom's voice was a blade wrapped in gauze. Undo this psychotic thing before you ruin us. I poured water. The glass shook a little, not because I was scared. My hands tremble when I'm very, very sure. I opened my laptop. The passwords were muscle memory. In under 15 minutes, every lifeline I had built and maintained, electric, water, gas, Wi-Fi, phone plan, car insurance, was back in my control. The county portal took longer, but I filed the notice that I would no longer be paying their property taxes. The gas card, click, disabled. I didn't write a manifesto. I didn't post. I didn't subtweet. I just turned off the taps I had opened with my own 2 hands. From the couch, Evan stirred. You okay? He asked, voice rough with sleep. I am, I said, surprised to hear it and find I meant it. He sat up, hair a mess. You did it. They did, I said. I just believe them. He studied me, then nodded like a coach who trusts the runner knows when to break for home. I'm here, he said. Nothing else. That's the thing about Evan. He doesn't make speeches. He makes space. I started a spreadsheet. Date, payee, amount, reason, evidence. I dug up receipts, bank confirmations, emails with sleepy subject lines, quick question, tuition due, help, insurance renewal, and drop them into neat rows. I watched the total climb and climb until the number felt like overheated metal. I wasn't just cutting them off. I was accounting. The group chat pinged like a trapped bird. I ignored it. The voicemails piled up. Angry, then pleading, then angry again. I forwarded the entire balance sheet to my inbox, then to a fresh draft titled, Final Notice, Outstanding Balances. The body was cold, intentionally, itemized totals for tuition, mortgage support, insurance, groceries, maintenance. At the bottom, the sentence I practiced in my head like a prayer. This is not a request. You have 30 days to initiate a repayment plan before I proceed with legal action. This email serves as formal notice. I CC Julia, old friend, family law attorney, patron saint of women who've learned the cost of being nice. Her reply popped in 30 seconds later. Send it. I'll take it from there. I hit send. The phone rang instantly. Kayla. Decline. A text flew in a beat later. What is wrong with you? I put the phone face down and felt the smallest, quietest smile rise, like steam. Dad's email arrived next, opening with, let's be reasonable, and ending with a sermon about family loyalty, as if I hadn't traded entire years of my 20s to keep their roof from melting in the rain. I didn't finish reading it. Delete. Mom went public. Of course she did. A long Facebook paragraph about some people forgetting who raised them and turning into monsters when they make money. She tagged me. Aunt Gina jumped into the comments. Disgusting behavior. I'd be ashamed. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My inbox began to populate with messages I didn't expect. Quiet cousins, distant uncles. They borrowed from us too. They never paid. One uncle wrote, I went no contact after they asked me to co-sign Kayla's loan. Every note was a pebble dropping into the same pond. You are not crazy. Then my grandfather, my mother's father, called. He's a man of 3-word verdicts. Send the invoice, he said. I sent it. 3 hours later, you're doing the right thing. Don't stop now. I closed my eyes and let that sentence anchor me like a dock piling in rough water. By the time dawn stained the edges of the blinds, the group chat had slowed to a simmer. A new number called and went to voicemail. Dad, sounding suddenly reasonable. Let's settle this privately. No courts, no embarrassment. As if embarrassment were the crime here. Julia's message landed right after. Don't respond. We'll draft terms. I looked at Evan. He handed me coffee. No words. Just a soft nod that said, keep going. Outside, the city was waking. Inside, something else was. A version of me that didn't confuse funding with love, silence with peace, or forgiveness with forgetting. They said I was out of the family. I turned off the last light I'd been holding over their heads, and finally saw my own house in the dark. Morning came quietly, but my phone looked like a siren. 31 missed calls, a voicemail so full it refused new messages, and a group chat thread that had turned into an emotional crime scene. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I made coffee. The first cup I'd brewed in years that didn't taste like guilt. By 8 o'clock a.m., I had opened a new Excel sheet, a proper ledger this time. Tabs for tuition, utilities, insurance, groceries, vehicle maintenance, even emergency transfers. Every expense neatly dated and cross-referenced. Every sacrifice finally visible in black and white. Line by line, the number rose, $134,000 in total. That was the price of their comfort. The price of their, we're so proud of you, honey text followed by, can you cover this month's bill? Evan wandered into the kitchen, hair messy, wearing that soft gray shirt that made him look half asleep and half concerned. He glanced at my screen. Looks like you're building an empire, he said quietly. Just a paper trail, I replied. He came closer, kissed my shoulder. It's about time you put yourself on the record. It wasn't anger fueling me anymore. It was clarity. Sharp, sterile, surgical. By noon, I had written a formal email. Subject line, final notice, outstanding balances. It looked nothing like a family message. Cold, professional, precise. I listed every transfer, every loan, every cent, down to the streaming subscriptions they used under my account. And at the end, the line that made my hands stop shaking. This is not a request. You have 30 days to initiate repayment before legal action is taken. I CC'd Julia, my attorney friend. She was brilliant, blunt. and had a heart built for women like me. Too generous for too long. Her reply came minutes later. Send it, I'll handle the follow-up. So I did. The silence lasted maybe 4 minutes before the first response hit. Dad, let's be reasonable. Mom, how could you do this to us? Kayla, you're ruining everything. Delete, delete, delete. Then came the retaliation. By 2 p.m., my mother's Facebook post was live. A reminder that some people forget who raised them once they start making money. Pride comes before destruction. She tagged me. Classic. Within an hour, Aunt Gina commented, disgusting behavior, I'd be ashamed. But what they didn't expect was what came next. Support. A message from cousin Melanie. Eileen. They did this to us too. Borrowed money after Uncle's surgery. Never paid back. Then Uncle Dave. You're not the first one they used, sweetheart. You're just the first one who said no. The wall they'd built around their narrative, that I was selfish, ungrateful, cold, started to crack. That evening, while I was at Evan's place, my phone rang again. An old number I hadn't seen in months. Grandpa Henry. He didn't waste words. Send me the invoice, he said. I hesitated. Grandpa, I don't want to drag you into... Send it, he repeated. His tone was quiet but final. So I did. 3 hours later, a message popped up from him. You're doing the right thing. Don't stop now. I stared at that line until the screen dimmed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel cruel. I felt seen. The next few days blurred together. Texts, voicemails, shifting tones. Anger turned to guilt. Guilt turned to fake peace. My parents sent a group message titled Family Meeting. Let's talk this out face to face. No lawyers, no drama. I didn't reply. Kayla left a 6-minute voice note, crying so hard she hiccuped through it. You're destroying my education, Eileen. If I can't graduate, it's on you. She even threatened to sue me, for not paying her tuition. Julia just smirked when I played it for her. Let her try. She'll be laughed out of the clerk's office. We drafted the next document that night. A formal legal letter, certified mail, bolded deadline. Full repayment required within 12 months. Any communication from Kayla must go through legal channels. A signed acknowledgement of past financial responsibility, and a clause forfeiting any future assistance from Eileen Johnson. Julia looked at me. You sure you want this in writing? I nodded. If I don't, they'll rewrite the story again. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the record, the truth. So I didn't just send it to my parents. I sent it to every aunt, uncle, cousin, and grandparent who'd ever been part of the whisper chain. No caption, no explanation, just the letter and the receipts. Within hours, my phone lit up like a fireworks finale. Half of the family texted in disbelief. We had no idea. They told us you were unstable. We're proud of you for standing up for yourself. For once, their lies couldn't breathe. Kayla, though, went nuclear. She made a burner Instagram account just to send me poison. You're jealous. Mom and Dad never loved you like they loved me. You're ruining their lives. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted every word and forwarded them to Julia. Evidence. By the weekend, my parents' tone had shifted again. Another email arrived. We're willing to settle this privately. No courts, no embarrassment. I laughed, quietly, tiredly. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. Julia's response went out the same day, sealed and notarized. Full repayment, no direct contact. Sign or see us in court. I didn't just copy my parents this time. I CC'd the entire extended family. Again. This time not as revenge, but to make sure the story couldn't be rewritten ever again. Because I was done being their silent accountant. This time they were the ones paying interest on my silence. The following Monday, my inbox looked like a courtroom. Subject lines read like verdicts. We can fix this. Please don't do this to us. Urgent. Family matter. I ignored all of them. By now the rules had changed. Everything in writing, everything documented. Julia made sure of it. She called that morning, her voice steady and clinical. We'll set the terms today. You're done reacting. From here on out, they respond to you. That felt strange. Power in places I used to keep guilt. The repayment plan was simple, bulletproof. $134,000 total, paid within 12 months. Interest on delays. 2 missed payments trigger legal escalation. No contact from Kayla unless through counsel. A clause that barred any future financial requests. I reread it 3 times, feeling the weight of every number I'd once given away freely. Evan leaned over my shoulder. You really think they'll sign that? No, I said, but they'll read it, and that's what matters. He smiled. That's my girl. By noon, Julia hit send. The subject line, Formal repayment agreement. Johnson Family Matter. Attached. A clean PDF stamped with her firm's insignia, calm as a gun in the sunlight. I didn't just send it to my parents. I sent it to the entire extended family again, the ones who'd been spoon-fed my parents' narrative for years. No message, no caption, just receipts and truth. By evening, the ripple had started. 6 cousins messaged me privately. I had no idea they owed you that much. They borrowed from my dad, too. Eileen, you're not the problem. You're the mirror. But the loudest reaction came from Kayla. At 10:27 p.m., she found a new outlet, a burner Instagram account. No photo, no followers, just a name. Truth Hurts, 1986. The DM started rolling in. You're destroying my life. You've always been jealous. You'll die alone like you deserve. Mom and Dad never loved you. They loved me. Each message hit like a mosquito bite. Small, irritating, pathetic. I didn't reply. I didn't even block her. I just screenshotted everything, zipped the folder, and sent it to Julia with a single note. Add this to the file. Within an hour, Julia responded with the precision of a blade. Noted, documented harassment. This helps us. 2 days later, my mother shifted strategy, from guilt to diplomacy. A new email arrived. Subject, let's handle this privately. Body, we can avoid court. Let's talk like adults. No one needs to get hurt. I laughed, a sound that felt like it belonged to someone freer. Hurt? They'd hurt me for years. They just called it family. Julia didn't laugh. She typed a calm, devastating reply. All further communications must be directed to this office. Any contact with Ms. Johnson outside counsel will be considered harassment. That was the moment the power dynamic truly shifted. They couldn't guilt me anymore. Not with words, not with silence, not with the fragile word, family. Meanwhile, Evan stayed in the background. Not rescuing, not fixing, just witnessing. When I got too lost in spreadsheets and documents, he'd slide a glass of water beside me. When I spiraled about whether I was too cold, he'd say, "Cold is the right temperature for truth." Sometimes he'd just hold my hand, thumb tracing circles over my skin, wordless reassurance that I wasn't heartless, just healing. But one evening, an unexpected twist arrived. A message not from my family, but from someone I hadn't thought about in years. Evan's ex, Marissa. Her DM popped up with the kind of tone only petty people master. Hey, Eileen, just a heads up. Your boyfriend's family doesn't like how you're making a scene. Be careful, hun. You're getting a reputation. I stared at it for a second, then laughed out loud. This wasn't a family crisis anymore. It was a circus, and everyone wanted a cameo. Evan read the message over my shoulder, sighed. She still hasn't learned boundaries. Guess she fits right in with my family, I muttered. He kissed my temple. Difference is, you're done letting people feed off you. That night, while I was archiving documents, a line from my mother's earlier Facebook post caught my eye. We remodeled our kitchen 4 years ago with love and hard work. At the time, it had sounded like fluff, a brag. But now, reading it in the light of what Julia was preparing, it stuck with me. 4 years ago, right around when Grandma passed, a thread of unease tugged at me. My mother had once said Grandma left nothing behind, that the medical bills had eaten everything. But that kitchen remodel had appeared out of nowhere. Marble counters, new appliances, a full renovation. The timing didn't add up. I bookmarked the thought, the kind that hums under your ribs and refuses to die down. I didn't know it yet, but that tiny suspicion, that glint of timing and tile, was about to open a new wound in this story. Because money wasn't the only thing my family had stolen. They had stolen my name. And soon, someone from New York would call to prove it. It started on a quiet Thursday afternoon, the kind that feels harmless until it isn't. I was halfway through a client report when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number from New York. Ms. Johnson? A woman's voice asked, crisp and polite. This is Amy Patel from the Patterson and Lowe probate office. We're handling the estate of your late grandmother, Eleanor Johnson. My chest went still. Grandma. The one who taught me to write thank you cards and hide $20 bills inside birthday books. Amy continued. I just wanted to confirm some beneficiary details. There was a small trust fund, about $40,000, originally split between you and your sister, Kayla Johnson. I froze. Originally? A pause. Then, softly, yes, ma'am. It appears your name was crossed out and replaced. The signature on file doesn't match your official signature from prior documents. We're required to notify you before disbursement. I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles went white. Wait, I whispered. You're saying someone removed me? Yes, 4 years ago, actually, Amy said. the same year the trust was liquidated. 4 years ago, the year my parents remodeled the kitchen. I closed my eyes. The marble countertops, the new appliances, my mother's smug Facebook caption, "Hard work pays off." Except it wasn't hard work, it was fraud. Amy's voice softened. "If you'd like to dispute, I can send a verification packet and connect you with our legal department." "Please do," I managed. The moment I hung up, I sat in silence. Not crying, not shaking, just numb. Because deep down, I already knew. I forwarded the email and notes to Julia. Within minutes, my phone lit up again. "Eileen," she said, voice calm but edged with fire, "we're adding forgery and inheritance fraud to the case. Don't contact them. Let me handle this." By evening, everything was in motion. Julia's team filed for a temporary freeze on my parents' assets pending investigation. They moved fast, too fast for my parents to catch up. At 9:04 p.m., my father sent an email that began with, "I had no idea any of this happened." 5 minutes later, my mother sent one too. "It was a misunderstanding. You always said you didn't want anything from Grandma. We just used it for the family." The family. That word again, used like a blade wrapped in silk. I didn't reply. I just forwarded both messages to Julia. By the next morning, she had filed an official fraud notice with the probate court. Within 48 hours, the court froze their accounts. Meanwhile, my mother was busy doing what she did best, controlling the narrative. At 10 a.m., she sent a long, tear-soaked email to the entire extended family. "We raised Eileen with everything we had, and now she's trying to destroy us over one mistake. She's suing her own parents, dragging our name through court. We're heartbroken." It took less than an hour for the response to blow up in her face. My quiet Aunt Meredith, who never joined family drama, hit reply all with one sentence. "You mean the mistake where you stole her inheritance?" The silence after that reply was louder than any courtroom. One by one, the dominoes fell. Cousin Ben shared screenshots of old messages, my dad begging him for a loan to fix the plumbing that never got repaid. Uncle Dave attached texts from 2018 showing my mother lying about needing money for Kayla's medical bills. They weren't just exposed, they were unraveling. I didn't post, I didn't defend myself, I didn't need to. Their own words did it for me. For years, they painted me as the ungrateful daughter, the ice queen, the one who forgot where she came from. But the truth had receipts now. That night, Evan came home with takeout and found me sitting at my desk, surrounded by court papers. He placed a carton of pad thai beside me. "You look like someone who just detonated a dynasty." "Maybe I did," I said. He smiled. "Good." We ate quietly. The city outside buzzed, distant, indifferent. For the first time, I wasn't part of their chaos. I was watching it from the outside. A week later, Julia called again. Probate confirmed the fraud. The trust withdrawal happened exactly when your parents filed for that home remodel permit. I exhaled. "So it's real." "It's real," she said, "and we're adding it to the civil suit. We'll file for recovery plus damages." For a long moment, I didn't speak. I thought about the years of missed birthdays, the family dinners where I paid the bill and still got called selfish, the way my mother could make guilt feel like oxygen. Now, the truth wasn't a feeling, it was a legal fact. That weekend, my mother showed up at my apartment building. She looked tired, her mascara smudged, her hair pulled back in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid. She didn't knock right away, just stood there in the hallway, clutching a wrinkled envelope. "Eileen," she said when I opened the door, "please, we're losing the house." Her voice cracked. "Do something for Kayla." Something inside me went completely still. "For Kayla?" I repeated. "You mean the same Kayla who watched you text me out of the family?" She looked down. "She's still your sister." "She's an adult," I said softly, "and so am I." For a second, her mask slipped. I saw it. The panic. The realization that the daughter she used to control wasn't coming back. I stepped aside just enough to hand her a paper from the folder on my table, the formal eviction notice Julia had filed that morning. "You'll get this officially in 7 days," I said. "You still live in my property. That's ending." Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did." She stared at me for a long time, eyes glassy, mouth trembling, searching for the old Eileen, the fixer, the forgiving daughter. But that Eileen was gone. "Goodbye, Mom," I said and closed the door. I didn't watch her leave. I just listened to the soft click of her heels fading down the hallway, the sound of an era ending. By the end of that month, the house was officially theirs no longer. Julia's firm handled the eviction cleanly. The deed stayed under my name. The renovation they'd bragged about was now evidence in an active fraud case. I sold the property within 3 weeks. The profits didn't feel like victory. They felt like closure. When the sale papers cleared, Julia called with one last update. The inheritance recovery is moving forward. Their assets are frozen until the court decides damages. I thanked her, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. My mother tried one last email. "We forgive you. Please forgive us." I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to Julia. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept 8 hours straight. No calls, no guilt, no chaos. They said I'd destroyed the family, but all I'd really done was turn on the light. The morning after the eviction papers were filed, the world felt unnaturally quiet. No notifications, no messages, no noise. Silence, the kind that used to make me anxious, now sounded like peace. Julia called around 9. "They've signed the repayment plan," she said, her tone somewhere between disbelief and victory. I blinked. "They actually signed it?" "Yes, full amount. 12 months, interest on late payments, and a clause that if they default twice, the agreement becomes void and we pursue court judgment. They're cornered, Eileen. They know it." I exhaled slowly, then whispered, "Good." That afternoon, I printed the signed document, the ink still warm, the signatures sharp and shaky. For a moment, I just stared at it. There it was. Proof. After years of being their safety net, I finally had something they couldn't twist into guilt. Evan peeked over my shoulder. "That's the sound of freedom on paper." He wasn't wrong. They probably thought signing the document would buy them time. They didn't realize time was my currency now. Because what they didn't know, what I'd quietly ensured, was that the house title and both car registrations were still under my name. I had never transferred ownership. I hadn't trusted them enough to. And now, for the first time, that caution was power. A week later, the first repayment arrived, $3,800. Julia confirmed the transfer. "They're serious," she said. I smiled faintly. "They're scared." "Same thing," she replied. It was a start, a small one, but it felt like an apology written in numbers instead of words. Then came a new kind of storm, the aftermath of exposure. Relatives who used to ignore my messages now sent long paragraphs about being proud or understanding now. I didn't respond, not out of bitterness, just preservation. Even Kayla tried once more, a text that began with, "You won, okay? Are you happy now?" I stared at it for a full minute before replying. No one wins when family turns into debt. Then I muted her number. One evening, I stopped by the old house, purely to collect paperwork from the property manager. The driveway was empty, the curtains gone. Inside, the air smelled of lemon cleaner and endings. There was a faint rectangle on the living room wall where the family photo used to hang. The one they'd forced me to take after the remodel, their smiles as artificial as the marble behind them. Now it was just a pale outline. I didn't feel triumph, just stillness. This was what letting go looked like. When I left, I dropped the house keys into a plain envelope and mailed them to Julia's office for record keeping. No ceremony, no emotion. Just another item off the list. Evan met me outside. "You didn't want to keep a key?" he asked gently. I shook my head. That house was never home. It was collateral. He squeezed my hand. "Then it's over." But he was wrong. Not over. Settled. There's a difference. A week later, Julia sent me a short email. Subject: Case update. They've made the second payment. Fraud investigation ongoing. Keep your accounts separate. Don't engage. I stared at her message and realized something. For the first time, my family had no access to me. No passwords. No auto-pays. No guilt. Every cord was cut. Every tie legal. And I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. A month passed. The repayment schedule continued without disruption. My bank notifications no longer triggered anxiety. The total owed dropped slowly, methodically, like sand through an hourglass. Meanwhile, the probate fraud case in New York gained traction. Julia forwarded a report. Forgery confirmed. Disbursement to be reversed. My grandmother's trust, my rightful inheritance, would be restored in full, plus damages. I printed that email and pinned it to my fridge like a medal. One Saturday morning, while making coffee, Evan asked, "So what happens when they finish paying you back?" I smiled slightly. "Then they're just people I used to know." He nodded, quiet. "And what about you?" I thought about that. About the version of me who once believed love was measured in invoices and favors. "She's gone," I said, "and I don't miss her." He smiled. "Good, she was exhausted." I laughed, a real laugh this time, unweighted. A few weeks later, I got another message, this time from Julia again. "FYI, your parents are trying to appeal the asset freeze." Judge denied it. I didn't even blink, because by now, none of it shocked me. Their downfall wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, administrative, legal. Exactly the way justice should be. That night, I walked into my apartment, dimmed the lights, and opened my laptop, the same one I'd used to pay their bills years ago. The spreadsheet was still there, but this time, I didn't feel the weight of those numbers. I selected all rows. Delete. The cursor blinked on a clean screen, a silence of its own. No debts, no obligations, no family chain dragging behind me. Just Eileen Johnson, no longer a provider, no longer a pawn. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't known how to define before. Leverage and peace. It's strange how peace doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it just slips in quietly, like sunlight sneaking through old blinds. Soft, patient, almost shy. 3 months had passed since my parents signed the repayment agreement. The world hadn't ended. Their texts had stopped. The chaos was gone. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't wake up to someone else's crisis waiting for me. Each month, Julia would forward a brief note, transfer received, on schedule. No drama, no excuses, just numbers clearing in the background. That was my closure. Not apologies, not tears, just consistency. The final traces of the fraud case were wrapping up too. The probate court officially reversed the forged trust. $40,000, the inheritance my grandmother had meant for me, would be restored in full, plus damages. I read the decision twice before it sank in. My mother's name had been struck from the trustee record. In legal terms, it was called correction of beneficiary designation. In my terms, it was justice. Evan and I moved into a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but ours. I paid for it with my own money, not anyone's guilt. He found me one morning, sitting at the table, staring at my old spreadsheet, the one I'd once used to track every dollar I spent on my family. Except this time, the cells were empty. He leaned on the doorway, deleting it again. I smiled faintly. No, just remembering. Does it hurt? Less than it used to, I said. It feels like looking at someone else's life. Sometimes I still thought about my parents. Not with anger, just distance. I heard through an aunt that they'd moved into a small rental outside the city. Kayla was working part-time and still blaming everyone but herself. They weren't villains anymore, just people who'd built their lives on taking until there was nothing left to take. The guilt I used to carry for abandoning them had dissolved into something simpler, understanding. You can love people and still refuse to be their lifeline. You can forgive someone and still never let them back in. That was the lesson Grandma had tried to teach me, tucked between her quiet hugs and those secret $20 bills. Love doesn't require sacrifice, it asks for honesty. One evening, I visited Grandma's grave. It was a cool spring dusk, the air heavy with rain. I placed fresh tulips on her headstone, her favorite, and whispered, "I found out what they did, but I fixed it." A small wind rustled through the trees like approval. I smiled through the ache. You were right. Family isn't who you save. It's who stands beside you when you stop saving everyone. I didn't stay long. Peace doesn't need an audience. That night, back home, Evan poured wine and handed me a glass. We toasted to small things. Rent paid on time, weekends free, quiet phones. He asked softly, "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it. Sometimes, but not enough to go back. He nodded. "That's how you know you're free." I smiled. "Free and unblocked." He laughed. "That's romantic in your world." "It is," I said. Later, as the city lights flickered outside, I opened my email one last time. Julia's final message sat at the top of my inbox. Subject: Case closed. All payments complete. Probate concluded. Congratulations, Eileen. You're done. I read it 3 times, then archived the entire chain. Thousands of words, years of exhaustion, gone with one click. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. No emergencies. No, "Can you help?" No, "You owe us." Just stillness. I walked to the window and looked out at the same city where I'd once worked double shifts, cried in parking lots, and paid bills that weren't mine. Now it looked different. Or maybe I did. For the first time in forever, I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the provider. I wasn't the one who kept everyone afloat while drowning quietly myself. I was just Eileen Johnson, a woman with boundaries, a balance sheet that finally made sense, and a heart that didn't run on guilt. I finished my wine, powered off my phone, and whispered into the quiet, "Let them think I'm out of the family. I built my own.